Hello friends, I'm Jeannie and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you my March wrap-up. If you're interested in finding out the books I read in March and how I feel about them, then you may want to stick around because I have my thoughts. Okay guys, so this monthly wrap up is a little bit of an interesting one. So I have some books here that people really love and I feel differently about.
I want to thank my haters too. They be downloading my stuff so they can hear it and talk crap about it, but it benefits me.
Book number 1, Anger is a Gift by Mark Oshiro. In this one, we're following Moss Jeffrey, whose father happened to be murdered by an Oakland police officer. It just so happens that where Moss lives, it's like not in the greatest area, and in the school he goes to, of course, it's like also not in the greatest school. Then it gets to a point where Moss is kind of faced with like this difficult choice where he has to either decide if he's going to give in to fear or if he's going to realize that anger can actually be used as a gift. Whew. Okay, guys. So, of course, first let's cover the good, right? What I liked about this book is that the topics that were covered in this story were, very important. They were very meaningful topics that are things that's going on in society today. I also very much enjoyed the diversity that was in this book. And there was like a whole melting pot of diversity and I absolutely loved that. Then there was also the whole concept of using anger as a gift, and of course I'm not going to explain that whole concept because that would kind of be ruining it. So I'll let you figure that one out if you decide to pick this one up. So now here comes the bad. Okay. So for me, there was the unlikable main character. Moss to me just wasn't it. Okay? He wasn't it. He wasn't my cup of tea. Ugh. I couldn't stand him. Sorry, not sorry. It's just how I felt. He was like a big baby to me. He threw temper tantrums. He was very selfish. He was just unbearable. Like, I really couldn't stand that he was the main character, to be honest. I also felt like he was a horrible son, a horrible friend, and just a horrible overall character, okay? The reason I say like he was a horrible son is because it kind of felt like he was using his mom as a punching bag, like if it was like this abusive relationship where his mother has to like constantly be apologizing for her faults and begging him not to hate her, and that was just so annoying. It was kind of like, why are you constantly apologizing? Like, you're a mom, you're human. I don't even want to talk about him no more. He was just so unlikable and I just couldn't stand him. Like, if he was someone that I knew, he would not be my friend. Okay? Not that he would not be my friend. Okay, let's make this clear. I would not be his friend. And no, you cannot sit at my table at lunchtime. Sorry, no thank you. So then the other thing that I didn't like about this story was that the writing was kind of like, I felt like the pacing was kind of weird and off for me, and it kind of was like missing that substance like between the scenes. Okay, so the ugly. So the trigger warnings for this was albinism, death, racial profiling, racism, police violence / brutality, panic attacks, violence. One of the tropes that I found to be in this particular story was the bury your gaze trope, which for me, I don't really care for. It just bothers me, okay? It just bothers me. Just be aware that that is a trope in here. The other thing that I didn't like with this plot also was that the main character was kind of like this godly character. Like he was all perfect, and it was like he could never do wrong, and everybody was the wrong one, and it was kind of like he was high on this pedestal. You know what I mean? There was a lot of sexism in this book. The women and the girls were often looked at as bad. They were often kind of like, in a sense, meaningless or just bad characters. They were never really portrayed in a good way. When they did something that made Moss look good, it was fine, right? But if they don't, and if it was something bad, or if they kind of like spoke out against Moss, then it was kind of like, oh, you had to learn your lesson. Oh, ha, that's what you get. And there was a particular moment where something like that happened, and that's why I said that Moss is not the greatest friend, because of that moment that happened. I felt that mental health was demonized by certain terms that was used, like broken brain, and the way that situations were handled. Just because you have some form of like mental health, or even like some form of disability that, you know, has to do with your brain, it doesn't mean you have a broken brain, okay? Because I'm sorry, but I have epilepsy, and that is a disorder that is from like the brain, okay? The electrical impulses in my brain are abnormal. So if somebody told me you have a broken brain, I'm gonna punch you, okay? You're gonna get punched, because it's like, don't tell me I have a broken brain. My brain, although, you know, I have this condition, this disability, it still functions. I'm still able to do things. The author putting that because of Moss's mental health, you know, the panic attacks and the trauma, putting like he has a broken brain, that to me was bothersome. Yeah, and that was kind of problematic to me as well. Then there was also the albiism on a person with a disability. One of the characters, he was kind of like badly hurt years ago, which left him in a wheelchair. And there's often times too where he can use crutches. The thing that pisses me off, besides the fact that this character got like beat up, stuff happened which was over the top. When Reg is down, right, Moss is like, oh, I'm raging. All these freaking flashbacks are coming back to me because of my father's death, which is understandable. Not taking that away from him. But just before Reg passes out from the agonizing pain that he was going through, because a lot has happened in this scene, he takes the time to tell Moss, not now. Reg smiles at him, and then it's like, that's it. It just all became about Moss. Forget, you know, the kid that is all beat up and stuff, and it's just like, are you kidding me? And then it was turned into this whole hashtag thing. Everyone walks in Oakland. Hold up. So how does that go hand in hand with what happened to the kid who can't walk, who sits in a wheelchair, and after the scene that took place, possibly won't even be able to like walk? How does that hashtag show anything towards that kid? How does that show anything towards disability rep? How does that show anything, you know, positive in regards to like, okay, this is because of Reg, where this is what sparked it? You know what I mean? Hopefully you know what I mean. But that just pissed me off. And I was just like, wow. Here we go again with it being all about Moss and that's it. Screw everybody else. You know what I mean? It's just, ugh, ugh. But, anyways, I digress. Okay, I digress because this book really triggers me. With all that said, what's my rating? Well, I gave this a 1 star. Listen, I was genuinely excited for this book. I mean, it was pretty much something that's so up my alley. Social justice, going against police brutality, LGBT rep, mental health, diverse characters, disability rep, and the list goes on. I was living for this book. However, this book actually just did the exact opposite for me, okay? Words cannot describe the disappointment I feel for this book. Like, it just deserves no more talk on this channel. I'm sorry if you're someone who loved this book, if you really enjoyed it. Kudos to you, but unfortunately, I just didn't feel the same. So with that said,
what's the name of this level?
Book number 2, Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J. Maas. Okay, guys, so Kingdom of Ash, I can't really give much of a summary for that one. Just basically is the last book in the Throne of Glass series, which is just like, just that. The last book in the Throne of Glass series. So, yeah. So the good is that, yes, I finally finished this series. I am glad I finally finished this series because I felt like it took forever. I enjoyed my time in this world. That's pretty much what I can say. I did like the ending, and what else can I say about this? Because I really can't comment on the writing much because, it's just the last book. So what can I really say? But we'll just skip through that. The bad. Okay, so the bad is that I felt like it was too long for no freaking reason. Like, why? Why? Why, Sarah J. Maas? Why? Why did the book need to be almost 1,000 pages long? There was just so much repetition, so much rambling, so much like stuff, fillers that it was just like, why? Then the action? I mean, was there really action? I'll leave it at that. Then I also felt like it was pretty much predictable. There was parts where I was shocked, okay? I'm not gonna lie. There was parts that kind of just like killed me, okay? There was that kind of part. And by the way, I do have a reading vlog on this. I will have that linked up above and down below if you would like to check it out. It did tear me apart. There's also tears, lots of them. So if you want to see my pain, then check out that reading blog. Some of the trigger warnings, of course, is blood, death, kidnapping, sexual content, torture, violence, and war. Alright guys, so in this part of the review, I'm going to speak about a few characters. So there will be some spoilers here. So if you have not read Kingdom of Ash, you may want to fast forward a bit until you see the next book being shown, or just a little bit before the book being shown if you want to know what I rated it. Okay, so the characters. Dorian. There's this part, right, where Dorian shapeshifts into female form. And he's basically like, I wonder if I have time to go to my tent to find out how to make a woman purr with pleasure, something to that effect. And it's like, my dude, you're in the middle of a freaking war. And your first thought when you shapeshift into a woman was that, like, I'm in a woman's body. Let me objectify it. Like, seriously? I thought you were cool. I loved you. And that kind of like really brought my love for him down. If you hear a little scratching, that's because Milo's here. You know him. He always got to make his way in the video some way, somehow. Abraxos. There's this part where Abraxos gets a mate. Why give him a mate just to kill the mate? Are you freaking kidding me? Honestly, a lot of things made me upset about Kingdom of Ash, okay? But that right there, that just made me the most upset. Even me talking about it right now, okay? It's
triggered. I am triggered.
all right. Manon, okay? She's my queen. I love her with all my heart. The relationship between her and Dorian, that was definitely a curveball for me. I was definitely like, huh? What? Like, I really had to read that again. Listen, okay? There is no one in this world that will ever convince me that Manon is straight. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And now, the heartbreak I felt, guys. The 13. Ooh, my goodness. I'm feeling those emotions again because why? Why did that have to happen? Why? Like, why did that have to happen to them? Why? Like, I could have cared about anyone else, I think, dying. But when it came to Manon, when it came to the 13, when it came to Abraxas, I wanted them to live. Even if it was a Lynn. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people love her, but I kind of got tired of her, to be honest. Yeah. Enough of that. So I'd like to take a quick moment to tell you guys, don't hate me, all right? I'm kind of stuck here. It's either like a 2.5 star to 3-star rating. So hear me out, all right? It's not that I didn't like this journey. I did have moments of fun, all right? All right?
However,
I was just not that impressed. I felt like it dragged out for no reason. I was left annoyed and exasperated. What I will say is that I am relieved it's over. Now, will I read it again? Probably not. Sorry, not really sorry. Book number 3, Heartless by Marissa Mayer. So Heartless is actually a retelling of the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland. And we are following Catherine and basically how she became the Queen of Hearts. It's basically like she falls in love with this like person. Whatever. Anyways, forget about the summary, right? Like so the good. What I loved about Heartless is that it kept true to the Alice in Wonderland world and the characters. I found that Marissa Mayer does know how to like paint you a picture with like the words that she uses. I thought like her writing style was pretty cool, you know, like very descriptive, and I love being in a world where it's descriptive for lack of better words. Okay, so the bad was that there was like a very predictable plot line. I was like, I believe like 100 pages in, and I kid you not, already kind of predicted where the story was going. That kind of sucks for me because most of the time when I'm able to predict something, especially that early on, I kind of start to lose interest, and then it's kind of just feels like I just want to like either not bother with the story, or I just want to hurry up and finish the story. So in a sense, with this one, it wasn't that I didn't want to bother with the story because I was pretty much enjoying my time in this world. So it was more towards like, okay, now that I know what the story is, I kind of like want to finish it. And mainly because it did give me like this sense of I think there's something else that's gonna happen. So let me continue reading it. Okay, so the ugly, some trigger warnings that I found are death, decapitation, emesis, what's the other one? Oh, and fat phobia. Yeah, Mr. Softy making his last rounds. Anyways, let's keep this moving. So, the ugly. My thought was, this is the end? This is the end. So, remember when I just said not too long ago that the reason I kept reading was because it kept me thinking that there was going to be something more? Yeah, I was like, well, it is predictable, but I feel like there's something more coming because that's the way the author made it seem. And then that ending came and it was just like, yeah, that. It sucked. Okay? That's all I gotta say about that. So, with all that being said, I gave this one 2.5 stars. To be fair, the journey into this world was fun, rather predictable, but fun. It was nice to spend time with the characters that I grew up with in Alice in Wonderland and, get little like snippets of their stories. I guess you could kind of say I was expecting more since this was a pretty hype book. Book number 4, The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. In The Love Hypothesis, we are following Olive, who is a STEM student, and she is kind of fake dating her professor, Adam. I forgot his last name. It starts with a C, I think. And the reason she starts dating him is to kind of like prove to her ex and her friend that she is dating. And, you could kind of figure where everything goes from there. They're fake dating, then maybe eventually sparks starts to fly from there. And yeah, the good of this story is that I loved that it represented women in STEM. I found that was very nice to see. It's always like so cool to kind of like have, like these smart women represented in books. And I love seeing that because a lot of times jobs like that and even like students that are in this type of field are not really shown. And I think it's important to show women in this way. So I love that the author did that. The other thing that I really liked about the way the structure of this story was put together is that Olive's hypothesis that she says in the beginning of each chapter was like so cute because it's like she'll hypothesize about something and that is going to refer to like something that's possibly going to happen in the chapter, but for the most part is exactly that. It's just a hypothesis. So it's like it either can go the way she thinks it might, or it can just totally not. And it's like she kind of has to think and experiment and things like that. It was pretty fun to see like something like that. And again, I thought it was like a super cute little touch to the story. Okay, so now the bad is that this had the miscommunication trope, which I can't stand, and which is just something that is common in romance. And I know it's like you should be used to it, right? Because this is just something that is like almost in every romance book, but I guess that's the point of why I get annoyed with it, because it's just so commonly used. So yeah, maybe it's just it's not you, it's me thing. I don't know. But yeah. I found Olive to be a little bit annoying with the fact that she would constantly be pointing out Adam's like size of things. Yeah, that don't sound right. And excuse Milo, because right now he's begging me to take him outside, but he has to hold on because this video has to get done. So back to the size of things, right? So when I say that, she would always constantly point out his hands was big, his height, yeah, like how large his hands on his feet, how tall, all of that stuff. You don't have to constantly keep pointing that out every single time he comes into the picture, or every single time you see him. It's like, okay, we get it. So yeah, I just found that so super annoying. And just like I'm finding my two dogs over here super annoying too, because they decide I want to start playing now because we want to go outside, and now we're going to start ruining mommy's video. Yeah. Um, so the ugly. The trigger warnings I found were cancer, death of a parent, misogyny, sexism, sexual harassment. Okay, so something that kind of like really bothered me was like, in what world is it okay for you to be dating a professor? Like, where is that okay? Because last I checked, there is no such thing. There is no such thing as in a university, in a college, in grad school, whatever the case is, there is no such thing as it being okay for a professor to date a student and vice versa. Where does this happen? Because Adam, you should have been fired, and Olive, technically, you should have been kicked out of school. So it's like, where? What? Yeah. I guess we just supposed to kind of like sweep that under the rug and act like, yeah, this exists. So with all of that being said, I gave this one 4 stars because at the end of the day, I really did enjoy the romance between Olive and Adam. Even though it was like, this is not supposed to be happening, how is this acceptable? But I found it pretty cute. It was cute, it was funny, and it was wholesome. It was just all the things that I really love in a romance. Is it the best romance ever? No. Not to me, but what I will say is that I can understand why a lot of people love this book. All right, guys, hang in there because we're almost done. And just take a few seconds to hit that like button and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Book number 5, Fruit of the Drunken Tree by Ingrid Rojas Contreras. In this story, we are following 7-year-old Chula who lives in a gated community away from the craziness terrorizing her country. Chula's mother hires Petrona, who happens to be a live-in maid that comes from the guerrilla slums. So Chula ends up being like very curious about Petrona, and she wants to find out more about her. These two girls, amidst all of the turmoil and conflicts that's going on in the world around them, they find themselves having to keep a secret, which leads them to having to choose between sacrifice or betrayal. This is a gripping story inspired by the author's own life growing up in Bogota, Colombia during Pablo Escobar's drug empire. I don't know why is my Spanish today like not happening? I don't know what's going on there. Anyways, I felt like you could definitely hear the author's voice through Chula and Petrona's voice. It was heartfelt, raw, and genuine. And that was something that I really enjoyed about this story because it just made it more realistic. Like it brought Colombia to life, you know, the good and the bad. So the bad. For me, the pacing was kind of off. There was just moments where it was just boring. And the writing style, I kind of felt like I couldn't get into it. And again, I'm just not gonna lie. I just feel like I couldn't get into it because it was boring. And then the other thing that I kind of felt was weird was that, as I mentioned with the summary, Chula was 7. And I kind of was questioning that because there was a lot of moments where she really didn't read as a 7-year-old, you know, like she read a little bit older. Like she would say things that made me think that maybe she was like a 12-year-old. There's quite a few trigger warnings, of course. We're talking about Pablo Escobar's reign. There's assassination, death, drugs, kidnapping, murder, a patriarchal, whatever, you get it, system, poverty, rape, and violence. So my rating for this was 2.5 stars. I felt that this story was one that it definitely was scary because of the circumstances and the struggles and choices that these girls had to, you know, well, that they faced and that they had to make. I think that the story was stronger during the last few chapters. Maybe it might have had more of an impact on me had that been throughout the whole story as opposed to it just being done like within the last few chapters, you know? To be fair, the story is a very important one that sheds light on like many issues that many girls in Colombia face and might still be facing to this day. Book number 6, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. So in this story, we are following the mysteriously wealthy Jay Gatsby who happens to be in love with Daisy. This story is basically an American tale that was crafted in the 1920s during the Jazz Age. And that's about it for the summary. Literally. Okay, so the good. I really don't think I have much good to say. The only thing I really have good to say is that I was interested in this era and yeah, that's about it. Okay, so the bad. There were pretty much unlikable characters in this. I didn't care for none of the characters, not even Jay Gatsby. Like, literally, just none. They were all annoying to me. I was rather annoyed throughout this whole book. So much privileged white people complaining about absolutely nothing. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I get it. It's a classic. It's, you know, the time period. I understand all of that, but still, I was just so annoyed. Even if you like minus that out, right? I still couldn't care less for any of the characters. So that in itself was just for me. The ugly, there was death, murder, again, white privilege, racism, sexism, misogyny. Yeah, I really didn't care for this. It was really a disappointment, and it was the first classic I started out with, and it really didn't do it for me. And with all that being said, I gave this a 2-star rating. It's more like a 1.5. Quite honestly. It just left me with this main question in mind. Why does everyone like this so much? You know, if you're a person that likes this, kudos to you. I'm happy for you. No disrespect towards you, but unfortunately, it just wasn't my cup of coffee. Book number 7, A Curse in Ash by Julie Xanthopoulos. So in this one, we are taking a journey with Ashlyn, who happens to have these powerful magic abilities, and she is accompanied by these two men, a Faye, who happens to be her fiance, and a human who happens to be someone that you will find out who he is in the story. With her life being threatened and, constantly being on the line for something, these two men are kind of like, hey, we're not going to leave your side, and that's that. But then a curse hits too close to home, and Ashlyn basically has to figure out how she's gonna fix things. But she never anticipated having two men by her side in the process. Okay, so I'm basically just gonna mash everything up, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What I will say is that for a debut novel, I believe it's a debut novel from the author, it was pretty good. I enjoyed the pacing of how the story went, the whole magic system and the way certain things work, and the story behind the fiance and this other guy that's, by her side. It was pretty fun. It was a pretty fun trip and a pretty fun journey to go on. Now, what I will say is that I really didn't find myself getting too attached to anybody. Don't get me wrong, the characters were pretty likable, but I didn't feel so close to any characters. I also didn't feel like I didn't like characters. So I didn't find Ashlyn to be an annoying main character, which is great because a lot of times I do get annoyed with a female protagonist. I don't know why. I think because for the most part they're usually whiny and always like it's all about them, them, them. I don't know. It's a thing. It's there's just something. The other thing that I did like, though, like I said, I'm not a big fan of the love triangle, but for some reason this one kind of worked for me. I think it was because of the poly romance that was there. That's something that I don't get to read in books, especially in fantasy. Is usually always the same type of thing, the boys one girl type thing. This was nice to see, and I believe there's going to be another book if I'm not mistaken, so I'm very much interested in seeing how it goes in the next one. Okay, so the ugly is absent father, addiction, loss of a parent, grief, murder, coma, blood, sexual assault, car accident, panic attacks, cancer, and I think that's it. My rating for this one was 4 stars because, as I stated, I really did enjoy being in this world. Of course, there were some things that I felt could have been better fleshed out. However, I enjoyed the way the story went. I enjoyed the polyamorous romance, and I enjoyed the magic system. And with all of that said, highly recommend still, either way. So take a moment to chit chat down below. Tell me, have you read any of these books? What did you think? Would you read any of these books? And make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you have not already. And if you'd like to support my content even further, I have a Patreon that you can join. All of that stuff is linked down below. We are in the shadow fold. If you made it to this point in the video, leave this emoji down below. Make sure to check out this video if you haven't already. And always remember to sprinkle a little love and kindness everywhere you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys and see you in my next video. Bye.